Welcome back to another episode of Soul Threads. I feel delight in my heart today. I'm sitting here with a cacao and I had this urge to hop on a mic. I just came off of a beautiful interview, so I'm also feeling the energy of conversation, of connection. And as I was sitting here just contemplating, drinking my cacao and journaling about that experience of connection, I felt the urge to come on and talk about identity shifting. This has been something that I've been going through. Many of you know this. I talk about it openly. I share it on my podcast, on social media, that as of late, I've been going through this incredible identity shift. It's been one of the most vast experiences when it comes to who I am and how I show up in the world that I've experienced in my entire life. And it all started when we left the United States. I've gone through spiritual awakening, many iterations of that. I've gone through motherhood and how that opened up and expanded my capacity for this work. But when we left the States and went on this 8+ month journey through the UK, through Croatia, going to Bali, learning from mediums all over the world, something shifted in me that woke me up. And the best way I can describe it is being woken up. A dear friend of mine introduced cacao into my life all along the way, where there were these bits of ritual and the wind in the highlands and dipping my feet in the North Sea. And I just realized that for so long, I had been living this idea of what spirituality was meant to be. Somewhere in my spiritual awakening, I prescribed myself the prescription, the medicine of perfectionism. And through a lot of self-reflection and shadow work and reading and other mentors and coaches in my life, I've come to understand in these last 8 months that what was waking up in me was the soul essence of my own spiritual path. And so today I want to sip this cacao and share with you my reflections so that maybe there's something in here, a little light, a moment of reflection, an idea that allows you to walk home to yourself in a way where you don't have to look past your own way of being in the world to feel like you're doing it right. This identity shifting away from spiritual perfectionism, away from being good enough or not doing it the right way, is the same set of conditioned beliefs and systems that I was raised with or grew up in, made manifest in a spiritual context. So instead of shifting those belief systems, shifting away and rewiring that, I've actually done that through my spiritual awakening in this work prior to it. So what I am saying is that I saw how all of these old limiting beliefs, systems, structures were just superimposed into the world of spirituality instead of spirituality being the highest expression of my soul and my own path. And while that may be kind of a high level way to look at it, what I have found is that walking back home to that part of yourself, to having it wake up, to waking up that inside of you, whatever that is in your life that does that or has done that or is doing that, if you find yourself here right now, honoring that, listening to that, and following the threads of that is one of the greatest spiritual experiences of my life. So let's dive in today. Go ahead and get your warm beverage, take a sip, enjoy the coziness, and let's see what we discover together, because I have a feeling there are a lot of you here who are walking a similar path, who are asking, is this meant for me? Is this who I am? Who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to do? Why doesn't this feel right? This is one I've been asking myself for a long time. I think for me, spirituality became performative, not for anyone else, but for myself, actually. What ends up happening oftentimes in spiritual awakening is you discard so much of who you are or who you thought you were because you realize none of it was actually you. It was things that were told to you, you learned in the school system, you learned in your college years, from your parents, from your siblings, from your friends, from your geolocation, from your culture. But did you consciously adopt any of those things? And when you go through spiritual awakening, you start to look around and go, I don't agree with that system. I don't agree with this. This isn't feeling right to me. This is not a place of love. And you start rejecting, at least in my experience, a lot of your surroundings, whether it's relationship shifting, things falling away because they just don't align anymore, job opportunity shifting, what you do for work shifting, the way you contemplate life. It's a lot when you go through this. For me, it was very much a dark night of the soul situation. And I've gone through pretty distinct spiritual awakenings since, but this one's different. So I really feel like I'm in my third major spiritual awakening. But this one, instead of having those dark night of the soul elements, it's just this whole shedding and rebirth, this whole identity shifting and going, I'm actually walking back home to myself. I find this happening more and more with my external environment. I was talking to my husband about this actually last night, and I was saying the thing that feels most aligned for me right now, and that you'll notice that I'm going through, and you'll notice I'm changing, and you're going to have to get to know this new version of me again, is that my internal world is syncing with my external world. And that feels beautiful, but a little scary at the same time. The other day, I'll give you an example. I had an urge to go get piercings in my ears that I've wanted for years, but I've never allowed myself to do. And so I marched in and I got them done, and I was like, I love this. I feel adorned. I feel beautiful. I feel expressed. I've always wanted this. But something about my identity at the time, I call it my white linen phase. I really gravitated when I lost so much of who I was, or let it go. I won't say lost, I let it go consciously. And then had to make my way in the world to figure out who I actually was underneath it all. And when you start to ask yourself the question, who am I? It gets really interesting really fast. Because we're not our labels, we're not our careers, we're not our age, our gender, sex, our location, our roles. That's not who we are in our essence. Who are we? And when I started asking myself this question recently, the thing that came through when I was journaling was, I'm a soul in a human experience. I'm a soul having a human experience. I'm the universe experiencing itself effectively. Soul energy experiencing itself in this human lifetime. I am kindness and love, and I am figuring it out. And at the essence of who I am, at the core of who I am, I'm somebody who is here to have a very specific experience of expressing myself in the world, to help as many people as possible on their path, to let the ripple effects of that go out and touch as many lives. And that is what my soul feels like it's here to do, as well as being present and joyful as a mother and as a partner. Those are the things that feel like, who am I at this moment? And when you keep asking yourself the layers of who am I will say a lot of people shut the door on that book pretty quickly. When you start to ask yourself questions like that, you go, nope, I don't want to answer that. That's too much. But it can be so beautiful to dive in. And this has been at the core of this identity shift, this awakening for me. And I've taken you all on this journey because how are we supposed to know what it's like if no one talks about it? How are we supposed to know that this is what it's like for people, that this is the experience, that it can be diverse and beautiful and magical and complicated if someone's not sharing the truth of it? Another thing that I think happens in this spiritual space is you see people represented, authors, coaches, people meditating, and they have this very calm presence, which did actually end up imbuing itself with me, this grounded presence. And for me, it was all about alignment. Like I felt like I was being expressed in myself as the first time. But what I haven't seen as many models of, and I find this so interesting because this is what's actually rising for me, is there's this fiery nature that's coming up again. There's this self-expression, there's dressing a certain way, there's creating myself in a certain way. It feels artistic, it feels creative, it feels like expression. It feels fiery and interesting and vast. And I wasn't expecting that because when I was in my white linen phase, I had shed all my clothes and I was just wearing like all natural fabrics and everything was light colors. And I love that phase for me. But now I feel myself really attracted to like sparkly, magical things and black and reds and colors and different jewelry. And I know I'm going on and on and on about this self-expression piece, but I'm just really trusting that sometimes when we let go of so much of our identity and who we are, there's a fire in us that starts to burn from the embers. And as it starts to become this full flame, this fire, we start to burn away the things that were just identities we were trying on. And we start to make way for the beautiful blossoming from the ashes of that fire, of what is blooming from within, from what is blooming from our soul, not what is an identity that we're trying to adopt, but what's coming through from within. I haven't stated it that way before, but I really like that metaphor coming through, and I really like how it's showing up right now, because so often when we bloom from within the soil of our soul energy, that's when we go, oh, welcome home. This is who we are. Welcome home, dear heart. I feel that way even with this podcast, even with being here with you. There are 1,000,001 conventional ways that we've been taught to do this work, to podcast. And I'm sitting here lusciously taking sips of cacao, speaking what is channeling through soulfully and trusting that that message, even if it's a little chaotic, even if it's a little diverse, even if I'm sharing things I'm not fully comfortable sharing because they're very, very raw and honest and real, that there's a reason it has to come through that way because it's coming through me in a way that feels aligned and it feels true. I'm calling this my paint my nails era. That's what I'm calling it right now. It might change. It might change tomorrow. This paint my nails era, where all of a sudden I wanted this dynamic nail color when for years I had rejected anything that felt like it was like toxic or anything like that. But I'm like, you know what? My soul wants to play around with the creativity of this. I want to read different types of books. Tomorrow I'm going to go see Vitamin String Quartet, who I absolutely love, and listen to beautiful string music. And I can't think of a better way to spend time alone or spend time with friends. And the reason, and maybe go to a cacao bar before that. I'm really being drawn to this cacao bar locally. And so the reason I share all of this is because if you're in it too, if you're in this massive identity recalibration, if you're in the part of spiritual awakening where you have looked around and started rejecting things and saying, this is not what I believe, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel loving, this doesn't feel kind. These are not the systems, paradigms, and beliefs that I want to be part of. I no longer agree with this. And then you hit the part of spiritual awakening where you go, is anybody else seeing this? Quite literally, we are living in a world that is designed and we just accept the design of that world. Is anyone else seeing that this is kind of orchestrated for us to fit into these models? And for some people, this might be the point where they might go full research. And for some people, they might just reject things and then readopt things based on where they're at any given moment. It's an evolution. It's a process. A lot of things can happen at this moment of spiritual awakening. And then there's this aspect of spiritual awakening where you start tuning into this higher frequency, this like love and light time. This is where a lot of spiritual bypassing can happen, where you just want to be in high vibes all the time. And I went through that too. I wanted like all the sound healing, all the Reiki practitioners. I wanted to just be in every yoga class, every meditation. This was the time that I went to sound healing constantly, was in advanced energy intuition studying with this beautiful cohort of people. And I was studying mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was John Kabat-Zinn's teachings. And I remember going to this all-day meditation retreat and just meditating for, I think it was like 8 or 9 hours and just thinking, this is what's going to save me. This is what's going to light me up. This is what's going to help me feel a semblance of myself. This is what's going to put me on my path. And all of those things, this like love and light phase for me was so vitally important because I did learn incredible tools and I learned how to listen deeper to my intuition. I learned how to be alive in my curiosity and I learned to let so much go. This is the phase where my body started healing. I was able to let so much go. My nervous system was starting to heal little by little. I feel like I brought a whole new level of groundedness and zen into my life, but it wasn't it. Like it still isn't it. And then I had this realization that we never really arrive. We're just all on a journey, always constantly evolving and figuring it out. And change will happen through us or for us, regardless of if we change anything. Nothing is permanent in this world. That's the beauty of it. It is completely impermanent. And that is where the magic lies. And somewhere around this time, this last year, I think, if I'm being honest, it was coming out of motherhood, deep postpartum, having so much going on in my postpartum journey. I've shared it openly here about like postpartum anxiety and depression and OCD and how that hit me so deeply. And then finally having a child that was old enough to really start to reclaim some of the things that I loved about my life prior to children, and then reimagining them in the concept of family structure. And when I did that, when that was the normal, it was like a light turned on. I started experimenting with self-expression again. And that's when I felt for the first time maybe ever as a practitioner working with, people in mediumship and spiritual aspects, spiritual guidance and energy intuition, I could tell that I was walking back home to myself, or my true soul essence was starting to bloom, where my internal state was matching my external state. And for so long, I had this rich internal world and this rich spiritual experience and grounding practices and connection with the spirit world and mediumship. And yet my external state, my external world wasn't matching. And now I have gone through this crazy identity recalibration where they're matching. And so when I wake up every day, I don't have to ask, who do I want to be today? I get to ask, how do I get to express myself today? That, be honest, was like a hard-earned path. I feel like I had to go through all of the different aspects of spiritual awakening many multiple times to experience the place I'm at now, which is this fire, this fearlessness, this grounding, this embodiment. And so the next phase, the thing I'll be talking about a lot more, and the thing that I want to share here with you is around the importance of self-expression, of soul truth in your spiritual practice, in your identity. Because when we try on other identities that are presented to us, it's a great way to play around with it, but we don't really get to the core of who we are inherently already are and are asking to be. And that's why so many of them don't feel right, and they don't land, and they don't stick, because they were never ours to begin with. They were just another paradigm belief mask that we were bringing in on top of ourselves instead of letting ourselves bloom from within the soil that's already with us as our birthright of being human. When we bloom from the soil of our soul, we inherently can only ever do it right, because a flower is never wrong for being the flower it is. And the beautiful baby doe born in the woods is never wrong for being a doe born in the woods. It's just the essence of their soul energy embodied. I think about this all the time with my plants, with my cats, with myself, with my family, with people. We reject so much of ourselves, of our true nature, in favor of what feels like the right thing, the comfortable thing, the perfectionist thing, the spiritual perfection. And if we just allow and surrender to allowing ourselves to be expressed as we are, as we desire to be, the threads of our interest and curiosities. And I like to preface that with like always from a place of love. Because if you're doing things from fear or hate or distrust or negativity, it is a very different energy. It's still not that soul expression, because soul expression is pure love. So when you do things from curiosity and excitement and kindness, and don't shame yourself for trying things, you bloom into who you are. And everyone else around you gets to experience that. And when they get to experience that, the ripple effects are vast. And that is how the world changes. That is how we change our families, our lives, our communities, because we don't get small in the face of figuring it out. We don't shrink or contract to be palatable. We rise to what's within and know that the universe and ourselves and our lives will orchestrate around the energy of who we're being. I share this deeply and openly with you because I just truly feel that so many of us are walking this. And I also want to preface that I understand it's my lived experience, and no one's going to say it perfectly. And if you've ever heard a practitioner say, this is the structure, this is the way, this is how it happens, I reject that fully, actually. I don't think there's any one way. I think there's patterns we can observe, especially with spiritual awakening. There's these deep patterns. There's ways that we can experience things simultaneously. But when it comes to reality, you are only ever the only one experiencing your reality. No two people will experience the same reality ever, because it's through our own psyche and observation and images that are being mapped to our brain, to our subconscious, and to our energy and to our soul energy. No two will ever be the same. So knowing that no two experiences will ever be the same gives you a lot of permission to create the experience that you desire to have for yourself. Create the experience that you desire to bring forth into the world, knowing that that is what is meant to be placed with you. And as you go through these identity shifts and spiritual awakening, you might notice yourself bounce around. And give yourself permission to come back to it anytime. Maybe there will be a time where I just really enjoy wearing white linen nonstop, and that's what I want to do. Or maybe there'll be a time where I don't want to paint my nails anymore. Maybe permission granted to be and do the things that light you up and you're curious about, and to follow the veins of that at any given moment, knowing that that is how identities, awakening, and shifts create true impact both in your life, in your work, and in the world around you. And as I look at this message on the recording, it was 2222, and my spirit number, my numerology is 222, without a shadow of a doubt. This is the one that lands whenever I need reassurance, whenever that's happening. So sending you off today with a weaving conversation per usual on identity shifting, on awakening, on letting the fire within rise and burn, and then from the ash, letting the flowers of your soul bloom in the soil, in the very nutrient dense soil of who you are. Knowing that it was always ever going to be that way. It might just have taken a little bit of time and meandering to get to the place, not of arrival, but of acceptance. Thank you for being here today. I love you all so deeply. Until next time.